Hello everyone and welcome to our MDQII Block of the Month series. This is block 1 of 12 of our new series. This one's called the Quilted Block, and it was created for you by Rita Gizzard and presented by myself, Mark Garretts, and I'm a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get started with the construction and the software section of our project, I'd like to show you a picture of what the finished project, or in this case the block, is going to look like. You can see here we've got 4 corner pieces in 2 different fabrics and a third fabric for the center square. The fabric and the basic design is going to stay the same for each of the 12 blocks to make the finished quilt. But we're going to be changing up what's going on in the center, and you can see this month we're going to be doing what we call a quilted block, and there's going to be some quilting stitches like you see here in the center of the block. So let's go ahead and get started with the software portion of this lesson. If you haven't done it, start up My Decorative Quilter 2, and if you have a gray screen, what you want to do is come over here and you want to click on the new page icon, and then your screen will look something like this. So we're going to start by getting our workspace set up so that we all have the same workspace parameters. And the way we do that is we're going to come up to our ruler, and this is the top ruler up here, and what we're going to do is right click on it. And just a note, if I say right click, that obviously means a right click. If I just say click, that means a left click. So if I want you to right click, I'm specifically going to say right click, otherwise it's a left click. So when you do that, you're going to get this little window that pops up, and you'll see some check boxes here. You want to make sure that inches is checked, that show grid is checked, and snap to grid is checked. And lastly, we want to come down to our grid settings and click that. That's going to open our grid options window. And here we want to make sure that our horizontal and our vertical spacing are both set to 0.25, so that's 1/4 of an inch. Over here in our grid major, we want to make sure that our horizontal and our vertical is both set to 11. When you've got both of those set, go ahead and click OK to lock them in, and your screen should again end up looking something like this. Now that we've got that set up, we're actually going to set up some colors in our thread palette. Now down here at the bottom, these are the Floriani palette, that's the default. These are the available threads to choose from. There's 360 of them, and choosing the same one over and over again from this huge palette can sometimes be a little daunting. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some colors here in our design palette. You can see there's nothing here right now because there's no thread or nothing in the design. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some colors here so that they're easy to choose from when we need them. So the way we do that is we find a color that we like. For example, I'll pick this blue frost color here, and I'll right click on it, and you see a little window pops up that says add to design palette. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click that, and that's going to temporarily put it here in our design palette. Notice it doesn't have a number in it yet because I have no thread assigned to it. So what I want to end up with is 2 light blues and 2 dark blues. So I'm going to find another light blue. Let me just come over here and choose this one, Floriani Moderate Blue, and I'm going to right click on that and click Add to Design Palette. Now I need 2 darks, so let me just choose this one here. This is Floriani, let me go with this one, Floriani Blue Jay. I'm going to right click on that, say Add to Design Palette. I'll choose the one right next to it, which is Blueberry, and say right click on it, say Add to the Design Palette. So now I've got these 4 colors here in my palette, easy to choose from. And I'm going to start adding some stitches in here for the placement stitches for our batting. To do that, you want to come up to the very top here, and you want to click the run stitch icon because that's what we're going to put in. Over here in our properties, I'm going to come over and I'm going to change the stitch length, which defaults at 3. I'm going to backspace over it and change it to 4 and click apply. And when I do that with no stitches selected, that sets the default for the run stitch for this particular design to be 4 instead of 3. So now when I put in stitches, they'll be at 4. Before I start putting in stitches though, I want to come in and I want to start assigning it a particular color. We're going to click the very first color here in our design palette. That's that blue frost color, so I'm going to click that. So now when I start putting in colors, they'll be in that blue frost. In your printed instructions, you are going to see a picture of what I'm about to do with some little flags showing you where the points that I'm going to click are, and they'll be numbered 1 through 5. I don't have them on my screen here, so if you look in your printed instructions, you'll see where these points are supposed to be. But here's our center point. I'm going to come one major grid intersection over, and going to be right here, and I'm going to click right there to start. Now, because we have snap to grid turned on, I don't have to be super precise and get right on the intersection. In fact, I'll do one a little bit off here on purpose so you can see. Again, I'm going to left click, and you can see it snaps right to the grid line here. I'm going to come way over here, and I'm going to do that one more time. So I'm just going to click to put in that point, come down to the bottom right and click, come over here and click, and then I'm going to come back to my beginning point and click. And once I've done those clicks, I'm now going to right click to lock those changes in. Now I've got thread in here, I've got run stitches now in here, but they're a little hard to see on the screen. And so what I'm going to do to make them a little bit easier for you to see in this video is I'm going to come over to my toolbar on the left, and I'm going to click my 3D icon, which is going to turn them into 3D. And you can see that makes them a little bit bolder. It's simulating the stitches, so it makes it easier for you to see. You have the option at home of turning that on or off. That's completely up to you. So we've now created those. We are going to come up and click our run stitch icon one more time. We're going to come down to our second light color, and we are going to click on it, and that's going to now let us start inputting in another color. The reason that we're doing that is because we want the machine to stop in between these colors, because we want to do things like, for in this case, we're going to put some batting down, then we're going to put down some more placement stitches so we know where to put our pieces of fabric. So these two light colors, those are going to be our placement stitches, and the two darks are going to be our seams. So what you're going to do now is you're going to come over here to approximately where we started, except we're going to come one box up and to the left. So you're going to be right in here. So I'm going to left click. We're going to find that same point up here and left click, come over to the other opposite point and left click, and we're just going to repeat that all the way around. So we're creating these placement stitches for our first pieces of fabric that are going to go down. So I'm going to continue that all the way around till I get to the last point here, and I'm going to click one more time, and then I am going to right click to lock those changes in. And you can see now over here in my sequence view, I've done those placement stitches in another color. So what we're going to do now is we are going to transform or resize this block. So we're going to come to our sequence view, and we're going to click on this last stitches that we put in. This, in my case, it's the moderate blue color. And in the properties box up here, I'm going to click on my transform tab. And what I want to do now is I want to reduce the percentage of the size of this, because I don't really want it to be 6 inches. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change to 95%. Now, when you do that, you want to make sure that maintain aspect ratio is checked so that they both change together. So I'm going to first come in here and I'm going to put in a 95, and you see the second one changes to 95, and I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now I've got a smaller set of stitches, which is what I want. So now we're going to create our tack downs. What we want to do is come back and click up our run stitch. Again, nothing is selected. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my properties, and I'm going to change this to 2.5, and I'm going to click apply. Now from this point on, all the stitches that I put in are going to be 2.5 millimeters. So what we're going to do now is come down to our design palette, and we're going to click on the first dark color, so that we can start putting in some actual tack down or seam lines. And we're going to put in our first one, and we are going to put that in basically right where we did before. So we're going to come right here, and we're going to click at this intersection right here, and we're going to come up and we're going to find that same intersection on the top of our block and click that, and we're going to right click to tell it that we're done. Now we want to alternate a color because we want the machine to stop, so we're going to come down and we're going to select on the last dark color, which hasn't been put in the design yet. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to put in some stitches on the opposite side of this one. So we're going to come right here, and we're going to click. We're going to come right down to this intersection and click, and we are going to right click to lock those in. Now we're going to put in the second set for the opposite sides of the block. So we're going to come back to our first dark color and click it, and we're going to put in our next set of stitches. So we're going to kind of start where we left off, which is right down here. So we're going to click, we're going to come up to the end here and click, and we're going to right click that, tell it we're done. We're going to alternate back to our second dark color, and we're going to go ahead and repeat that by putting in up here. So we're going to click, we're going to come down here and click again. I don't have to be really precise, and then I'm going to right click to lock those stitches in. So now I have all of my placement stitches put in for my batting and my fabric. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our quilting stitches. So we're going to come over here to our embellishments icon, which is right here, and we're going to click it. And when you do that, you can see that this embellishment window opens here, and the embellishments are quilting stitches, and they're organized by category. So what we want to do is we want to click this drop down to find the different category. We're going to find the flowers category, and you can see I got lots of flowers that open here. And I'm going to scroll down until I see flower 10D. All right, so it's right here at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that. And over here in my sequence view, you can see that I've got two items that came in. I've got this one here in antique bronze, and that's actually artwork that goes around the whole outside of this design. And this brand color, those are my actual stitches. Now the artwork is very useful for lots of things when we're putting in embellishments. Primarily it's there so you don't have to manually outline it or automatically outline it when you want to do things like knock out the back of it so that quilting stitches or stippling or things don't go through the middle of it. In this case we don't care about that. We're actually creating the quilting stitches, and that outline is going to be distracting, so we're actually going to delete it. I'm going to do that by coming over here to my sequence view and clicking on the outline, which again is that antique bronze color, and I'm going to come up here to my scissors icon, my cut icon, and click it, and you can see that now that that's deleted. So what we're going to do now, the quilting stitches are selected. We are going to come up to our properties, and we're going to click on our transform tab, and we want to make this one smaller. So what we want to do is again make sure that maintain aspect ratio is checked, and we're going to reduce this one to 80%. So I'm going to come up to the top one here, and I'm going to type in 80. You can see the bottom one changes automatically. I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and that is going to reduce it to 80%. What we're going to do now is we're going to take advantage of a feature of the software, and that is when you position something and you get it over a grid line, the color of that grid line changes to say that you're perfectly aligned to it. However, that color change is going to be a little bit difficult to see because what we're going to see on that grid line right now is hiding underneath some thread. So that color change is going to be hard or impossible to see. So to get around that, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to this item, which is already selected. We're going to right click on it, and you'll see a menu that pops up. And we're going to take advantage of a cool feature of the software, which is the ability to temporarily hide items from view. So what you're going to do is come up to this menu item right here called Hide Other, and you're going to click that. And what that's going to do is it's going to hide everything in the design except for our stitches of our quilting stitches. And what we're going to do is we are going to take this and we are going to move it into position. So we are going to move over it, and anytime you see that hand icon, you can click and drag, meaning that you will move it. So what we're going to do is we are going to move it down here to the lower corner, and when we get in position, you can see that we've got that green that shows up there. So when you see that green, you see how it changes to green in certain parts of the grid. You're going to simply let off, and now that's positioned perfectly on the grid line. We're going to zoom in to the quilting now. So we are going to take our magnifying glass, which is right here, and we're going to click it, and we're going to drag a box around the quilting. So we're just going to come right here, and you can see how nice and big I've got that now, so that we can modify it. This is still selected. We want to come over here and click our shape tool, because we're going to modify this outline a little bit to fit into this quadrant just a little bit better. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to get rid of these stitches right here. So we don't need this kind of closure stitch that's going on. So what we're going to do is we are going to come right here to this point right here, and when you get close to the point, it changes. You see the cursor changes, it adds that blue dot. That tells me if I click or right click now, I'm going to be affecting this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to right click on that point, and the little menu pops up, and from this menu I'm going to choose split line. So I'm going to go ahead and choose split line, and I'm going to repeat that with this node up here. So again, I get close to it, right click on it, and select split line. And when I do that, you can see over here in my sequence view, I've got the first run selected. Unfortunately, in my video, you can't see it, but there's really a vertical line here. But it is selected, and I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to do that by clicking on it, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click my scissors icon, and that's going to delete that. And I'm going to come down and click on the last run in the sequence, and I am going to delete that. So I'm just going to click that, and now I've got those edge runs deleted, and now I've got a little nicer looking quilting pattern. The quilting should be all selected, and what we're going to do is we are going to now change our tie-ins and tie-offs for this. The way we're going to do that is we're going to come up to our Commands tab here, and you can see my tie-in and tie-off right now are set to basic. What we want to do is change both of them to none. So I'm going to select none for both of these, and these are going to get rid of the tie-ins and tie-offs, and we're going to add them back where we want them, but we're going to make a much bigger pattern out of this. So right now we're going to get rid of them, and once I've done that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to select my shape tool anymore, and I am going to move these points so that they are in the proper position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this point over to here, and I'm going to move this point up here. But you can see I've got a little bit of a problem right now, because my stop point is hiding the point that I want to manipulate. So if I click on this now, I'm going to be affecting the start and stop points, and you can see I know that because my cursor has that little red dot. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and just simply move it out of the way temporarily, and I'm going to slide this guy over so that it's in this intersection here, and you can see it automatically snap to the right point. And I am going to move the red stop point back now that I've done that, and I am going to repeat that up here. So I'm going to move this green point out of the way. I'm going to move my node up to the top there. These little points are also called nodes. And then I'm going to move my green start point rather, back up to the beginning. And the last thing I need to do is I am going to make sure that these 2 points are in the right point. So I am going to just move this point, and you can see it's already snapped there, and I'm going to reselect it and move the other point. So you can, it's really tough to see, but I had 2 points there, so now they're both perfectly right here in the corner. So once I've got that centered, I need to right click to lock those changes in, and you can see that now my quilting block is perfectly within this quadrant. So what I'm going to do now is I want to zoom out so I can see my whole quilt block, and I'm going to come up here to my zoom, and I am going to click zoom out, and I'm going to pan just a little bit here. I'm going to let me zoom out one more time. Okay, and that's a little bit far, so I'm going to go to 100%. So now I've got my screen to where I can see everything, my block, which is all going to be right in here. So what I'm going to do next is I need to take this particular item. I'm going to come and get my normal select tool to select it, and I am going to mirror this all around so that I get the same pattern in all 4 quadrants. So to do that, I need a copy of this. So I'm going to click my copy icon and my paste icon, and you can see now I've got 2 run sequences. My second one is selected, so I'm going to rotate that left twice. So here's my rotate icon, so I'm going to click it once and twice, and now I've got it rotated for this corner over here. So I'm going to click and drag it into position. Okay, so I'm going to get it kind of into position, and when I do that, I don't have it quite in position here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to nudge it. And the way you nudge it is you hold down the control key, and I apologize you can't see me doing this, but I'm going to nudge it by holding down my control key and clicking my arrow keys. So the first thing I'm going to do is nudge it upwards, and you can see as I nudge it upwards it gets closer. When it gets right on the line, you can see that I've got my bottom line turned to green, so that's what I want. And I'm going to nudge my other one. I think it needs to come to the left just a little bit, so I'm going to click my left arrow, and yes, there it is. You can see now I've got both green lines lit up, so I can now let off my control key, and that's exactly where I want it. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mirror these guys up here. I'm going to do them both at once. I'm going to do that by clicking on the top item over here in my sequence view to select both of them. I'm going to do that same copy and paste one more time. So I'm going to click copy and then paste. Rotate it left 4 times by clicking my rotate left once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, so that now it is rotated for the top, but it's obviously not positioned. So I'm going to hover over it where I get that hand, and I'm going to click and drag it up into position. I'm going to kind of get it approximately into position, and you can see I've got the center line perfectly, but the top isn't quite aligned. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my control nudge again. So I'm going to come down looking at the top, and I'm going to get it perfectly positioned to where it turns green. It needs to come over to the left just a little bit, so I'm going to nudge it over a couple to the left, and you can see here that I've got green lines. Now you won't see them all over the place. That's okay. You just want to get 2 sides lined up. So in this case I've got the upper and the right side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fix those tie-ins and tie-offs, because we don't have any tie-ins and tie-offs now in this design, but we want the very first one to have a tie on. We want the last thing that stitches to get a tie off. So we're going to come up to our very first run, which is right here. We're going to change the tie in to basic, so I'm going to come to my commands. I'm going to select basic and I'm going to click apply, and then I'm going to come down to the last run in my sequence, which is right here, and I am going to come up to my commands, and this time I'm going to change my tie off to basic and click apply, and now we have our tie-ins and tie-offs correct. So what we need to do now is we are going to bring our rest of our stitches back in so we can see them. So I'm going to right click anywhere in the properties, in the sequence view, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to click show all. So that's going to turn all of our stitches back on, and you can see all of the stitches. What we need to do now is we need to create a final set of stitches that goes all the way around the block. We already have a set that does that. That's up here at the very top. That's our placement line, but we're just going to simply reuse it as our final one. So I'm going to select the very first item in the sequence, and I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to click paste. And now in the properties, I'm going to come up here and change this to a stitch length of 5, because this is just kind of a guide stitch. And I'm going to pick this out later, so I'm going to make a nice long stitch length, and I'm going to click apply. And you can see when I did that, it automatically put it at the end of my stitching here, which is exactly what I want. I want to make it just a little bit bigger, so I'm going to come over to my transform tab, and I'm going to change it up to 101%, so I'm going to change to 101, and I'm going to click apply. So now that extra set of stitches is just a little bit bigger. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save this, and what we've created here is the first part of our project for this particular month. So we're going to continue on to create some more stitches. However, this is also going to be what we're going to do for every single block, all 12 of them. So rather than redraw this or recreate it every single month, what we're going to do is we're going to save this now so that we can just load it in over and over again every month. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to click the save icon, and I'm going to put this in my MDQII projects November 2015 folder, and I'm going to save this as basic block for BOM. So I'm going to save it as BASIC block, excuse me, I mistyped it, block for BOM, or block of the month, and it's going to save it in the WAF format, and I'm just going to go ahead and save that in the WAF format. You're also going to want to repeat this for your machine format. So we're going to this time come up and select File, Save As, and you're going to click the drop down in the dialog and select a machine format. So I'm going to stitch this out of my Brother Baby Lock multi-needle, so I'm going to select that first format here, which is going to save it in the PES format for that particular machine, and I'm going to click Save, and now I've got both of my files saved. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to create the quilting stitches for the center, and those stitches are actually going to be a repeat of this design element that we've just made in the corner. So rather than recreate it all over again, we're just going to simply reuse it by clicking on the last run in the sequence, which happens to be the one in the upper left hand corner here, and we are going to go to our Commands tab in our Properties, and we are going to change the tie off to none. Okay, and we're going to click Apply, and now what we want to do is we want to copy and paste this. So we are going to select Copy and then Paste. And so what we now have is 2 of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this to the right twice. So we're going to come up to our rotate right, and we're going to click it once and twice, and that's the copy, and we're going to drag this over to the lower right, the lower left corner. So it's going to come right down in here, and I'm going to get as close as I can at this view So that's pretty close, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit better to get a little bit better placement of this. So I'm going to click my magnifying tool and drag a box around it. And you can see I want this point here to kind of be in the center. So I'm going to go back to my select tool, and anytime I have that hand again, I'm going to be able to click and drag. So I'm going to just move it till I got that point nice and in the center. And again, I can use my green lines. In fact, let me do that. I'm going to use my control and I'm going to nudge it. So I'm going to nudge it over a little bit to the right, and I'm going to nudge it down a little bit. Excuse me, I need to go up, and boom, there we go. So now that's nice and perfectly positioned. So once I have that done, we have a little problem with this block, or this piece right here, because the start and stop points are in the wrong place. To see those, I'm going to click my shape tool, and you can see my stop is up here and my start's down here. I want to actually reverse them. So to do that, I'm going to start by moving the start point a little bit out of the way, and then I'm going to come up to my stop point and click and drag it down to the bottom, and it automatically tracks the line. So as long as I get close, I'm good. Then I'm going to move my start point all the way back up to the top here, and now my start and stop points are in the right place. So I'm going to come to my sequence view and click on that last run to get it selected in the normal mode, and I'm going to make another copy of it. So I'm going to come up to my copy icon and click it, and I'm going to click paste, and now I've got two of them, and I'm going to rotate this one left twice. So I'm going to click rotate left once and twice to make a copy of it, and I am going to drag this to the bottom right corner. So I'm just going to pan over a little bit so I can see the bottom right corner, and I'm going to select that one more time. I'm going to use my sequence view to select it, and I'm going to drag it over to get it into position, and I'm going to kind of line it up visually as best I can there. I did pretty good on the top. I'm a little bit off on the side. Again, you can see those green lines, so I'm going to use my control to nudge it over just one click, and now that one's in position. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the upper part of this, and I'm going to use that same trick we used before. I'm going to do both of them at the same time. So I'm going to click the top level here in my sequence view, and I'm going to copy and paste. So I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to click paste, and that gives us two of them. You can see my screen automatically zoomed, and I'm going to rotate them left 4 times. So I'm going to come up here and click rotate left 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to drag that one up into position. All right, so now that guy's in position, and again I'm going to use my control keys to nudge that into the perfect position. So I'm going to go up first where I get the green line, and I'm going to come, I don't know, let's see where I am. I'll come over a little bit. That's too far. I'll come back. Okay, I don't have any green lines to work with here because they're hiding under the thread. So I'm just going to eyeball it and say that's close enough right there in the center. And what we're going to do next is we want all of these guys to stitch correctly in terms of the tie-offs, and what we did was when we started out we eliminated the tie-offs for this, so we're going to put it back. So we're going to click on the very last run in the sequence, which is right here, just to select it all by itself, and we're going to come up to our commands tab. We're going to check our tie-off back to basic and click apply. And what we want to do now is we want to click on this minus sign in front of what we've been working on to collapse it, and we want to drag it so that it's above this blue frost. Okay, so this again is our guideline for trimming. So we're going to come and we're going to drag it up above it, and that's going to put it in right here. Now, even though these are the same color, it's actually going to stop here. You can see that it's going to stop because I've got two of the same color. So to get rid of that, we're going to right click on this item, and we're going to come and find the item in this menu that says remove stop. And when we do that, you can see now that all of that stitching is all going to stitch out together without a stop, which is what we want. And the only thing left to do is to save this whole thing as our final block that we're going to stitch. So we're going to come up to our File menu, and it's important at this point not to click Save, but to click Save As, because what we've been working with was our basic block, and we don't want to overwrite that. So we're going to come up here and click File, Save As, and this time we are going to name it Quilted Block 1 of 2. So I'm going to change it to Quilted Block 1 of, not 2, I'm sorry, 12. Quilted Block 1 of 12. We're going to leave it in the WAF format and click Save. And we're going to save it one more time in our machine format. So I'm going to say File, Save As one more time. And this time I'm going to leave the name alone, but I'm going to come here and I'm going to again select that Brother Multi-Needle format and select Save. And now we've got it saved in our machine format. And that completes the software section of this project. So let's go ahead and get started with the construction portion of this project. Again, here's a picture of what our final block would look like. But before we get into the construction of the block itself, let's talk for just a second about what the overall project is going to look like. So as you know, there are two parts to this first month's project: the basic block, that will be the block that we're going to base all of the blocks on, and then additions to that block to create the pattern for this first month's block. And of course we're going to create different patterns, but we're all going to base it on that first block. This is the first of 12 blocks, and there's going to be one block per month. Each block you'll stitch out 4 times, and at the end of the 12 months, the 48 blocks will be joined together along with quilted borders and a mock binding to create a 45-inch by 57-inch quilt. The materials list that follow will list the materials required for the basic quilt and for this month's embellishments. So here's the basic look of the quilt, and then one blank block and another picture of the first finished block. Each month we're going to repeat this basic block, but we're going to change the center to do something different and teach you a new technique, both in the software and the quilting. So here's the general materials list for the entire quilt. You're going to need some Floriani quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting, or you can use Floriani embroidery batting. Choice is up to you. You're going to need some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer. Color doesn't matter. You're going to need some embroidery and bobbin thread. You want to choose colors that work well with your fabric choices. Some R&K embroidery perfection tape, also known as the pink tape. You're going to need some Floriani applique wonder tape, Floriani wet and gone tacky tape, a minimum 6-inch by 6-inch or 150 millimeter hoop size, a Floriani heat craft tool, and a mini iron might also be helpful. You can also use the mini iron attachment for the heat craft tool if you have that. So here are the fabric details for the overall quilt. Fabric A is going to be your center and first border fabric. You need a 1 1/4 yards of that. Fabric B is going to be for half of your corners and the second border, and you need a yard of that. Fabric C is going to be for the other half of the corners and the mock binding, and you'll need 1 5/8 inch yards of that. You'll need some organza, that'll end up being in the center, a 1/4 yard, and some backing fabric. You're going to need 2 1/2 yards of that. Now here are the fabric details for this month's block. For batting, you're going to need 4 5 1/2 inch squares. In fabric A, you want 4 4 3/8 inch squares for the center of the block. Fabric B, you want 4 4-inch squares, and you want to cut those in half diagonally for the corners. And fabric C, the same thing, 4 4-inch squares cut in half diagonally for the corners. And these quantities are going to make all 4 blocks. So an important note before we get started is that some of the color changes in this design are there to make the machine stop between the steps, so you can put the fabric down and flip it, etc. You can leave in the same thread or you can change it as desired. However, if you have a multi-needle machine, you want to make sure you use the machine controls to insert those reserve stop commands to make the machine stop between colors. Otherwise, it's just going to continue on, and that's not what we want. So to start embroidering the design, first thing you want to do is load the quilted block 1 of 12 design into your machine. Hoop up a piece of Floriani nylon no-shell mesh, be sure to get it good and tight. Attach the hoop to the machine and stitch out the first color, which is going to be the placement line for the batting. Next, you want to place the square of batting within the placement lines and secure the corners with embroidery perfection tape, and then you want to stitch out the next color, which will be the placement lines for the fabric. Next, you want to center fabric A within the lines right side up. Next, you want to place your fabric B triangles along the placement lines, right sides together, on the center of the fabric. So right sides are going to be facing down. Next, you want to stitch the next two colors to tack the triangles down. Next, you want to press open the two corner triangles. Next, you want to place your fabric C triangles along the other placement lines, right sides together, on the center of the fabric. And then go ahead and stitch the next two colors to tack these triangles down. Next, you want to press open these two triangles, remove the embroidery perfection tape, and now's the time you want to change the top thread to the color intended for your quilting stitches if it's necessary. Next, you want to stitch out the next color for the quilting stitches, and then lastly you want to stitch out the last color for the guidelines. You want to remove the block from the hoop and trim the block to 6 inches square. You want to repeat the entire sequence 3 more times to make a total of 4 blocks. So that completes this month's block, and we want to thank everybody for attending. Please use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project at home. Come back next month for the next installment of the series. That'll be block 2. And don't forget to post your blocks to the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page, because if you post all of your blocks and then you post a picture of your final quilt, you'll be eligible to win a prize. So thanks again for attending. We'll see you next month.